Well, let us talk now to Professor Sam Wass, Director of the Institute for the Science of Early Years at the University of East London. Good morning.
Hi, Leila.
We could talk so long about this. We don't have super long, but I just want to start with some research that was published by the government at the start of this year, which showed that 98% of under twos were in front of screens on a daily basis. I mean, that suggests that, there's no going back from that, is there?
Yeah, definitely. And there have been, with early year screen content in particular, there have been massive changes, particularly since iPads and iPhones came out in 2009 and 2010. Other headlines from that same study, 2-year-olds watch for an average of 127 minutes a day, and the top 20% watch for an average of 5 hours a day. So there really are kind of very high levels of exposure that are coming through. And one of the things that's particularly interesting, and we're looking at particularly in the screen time review, is a change in the type of content. So away from what we call kind of long form content, so a 25-minute episode that you'll watch on iPlayer, towards YouTube. So 91% of 3 to 5-year-olds watch YouTube, which has much more different kind of very fragmented content. And also kind of the visual information is very different in structure. So that's important, because there really are big differences in the type of content that young brains need and that they benefit from. So it's a very, very different debate to the debate with older screens.
Right. So, it speaks to what Joe and Mo were saying there about, watching different things. So there is such a thing as sort of good and bad screen time for the under fives.
Yeah, definitely. So the reason, Leila, is that kind of basically our brain's a prediction machine. So every word that I'm saying, your brain is generating a prediction. And every time you shift your gaze 3 times a second, your brain guesses what it's going to see before you look. So that's kind of fundamental to how all brains work. But for young children, this process works very differently. So my 46-year-old adult brain makes predictions based on my extensive previous experience of what I've seen and heard before. But young children don't have so much experience. So to start with, the neuroscience is clear. They need things that are easy to predict. So they need things that are slow paced and repetitive, doing the same thing over and over again. And then as you get better at making predictions, we naturally seek out unpredictability. But what's important for screens in early childhood is that screens give us exactly the opposite of that. So it's not just that what we consume on a screen is much more fast paced. It's that the density and complexity of screen media for young people is going up over time. So kind of changes in light intensity and sound intensity, but also, more people, more objects on screen, more plot. And that's especially true, as I say, for short form video. So it really is a very different debate for early years compared to for older children.
And I guess there's also the argument for what it's coming at the expense of. So if kids are spending, under twos are spending hours a day watching screens, they're not necessarily going out and developing their muscles physically and in the way that they should.
Yeah, definitely. So there's strong effects for that, strong effects on language, so kind of less language predictions. But the area that I'm particularly interested in that we're looking at in our research is the effects on kind of behavioural and emotional dysregulation. So we know that when stuff is coming at us that's too fast-paced and too complex, so too unpredictable, our brain says to our body, okay, we better go into high alert mode. So we trigger what's known as the sympathetic or flight nervous system. So the heart starts to beat faster, we get a big release of energy to the muscles. And again, this is an evolutionary mechanism. So I can't predict what's going to happen next, so I better be ready to run, even though, you're sat still watching a screen on the sofa. So this is why children are ratty when they come off screens. But we also think that spending a lot of time in this high alert mode might be why lots of studies, like the study that you mentioned at the start, are linking screen time to kind of behavioural and emotional dysregulation, and why quite a few studies are now finding these longitudinal correlations between screen use and kind of what we call affective disorders, so things like anxiety. And we think it's all kind of spending a lot of time in this kind of very high alert mode during early childhood, possibly.
Sam, absolutely fascinating. There's so much to discuss, and I'm sure this won't be the last time that we delve into it. But thank you very much for the moment. Professor Sam Wass, there, Director of the Institute for the Science of Early Years at the University of East London.
Fascinating stuff.